Hey everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel, or hello if you're new. Hope you're all doing well. I just want to discuss how I think that McLaren's Mercedes engine change could sort of shuffle them about into the midfield a bit more, rather than being necessarily at the front of it in 2021. And this is because we know that there's going to be a series of freezes on the technical and the mechanical parts of the car, which aren't outboard aero that we can see going into 2021 and through parts of 2020. So the first of these freezes will be FP1 in Austria next week. The second freeze will be in FP1 in Italy later in this year, and the third freeze will be FP1 of the first race of 2021. And at that point, there will be no changes allowed to any inboard part of the cars. Only external aerodynamical changes will be allowed. So there's going to be a token system in place to allow teams to develop one major or two minor parts of these frozen parts, and that's great. And but there's very strict guidelines around those. And if you want to know more about that, Chamber F1's done a really good video explaining the 2021 freezes and how it will work for teams. But McLaren have to use both of their tokens that they are given to upgrade their chassis to fit the Mercedes engine. Now, I think this could be an issue in that when you look at the parts that are frozen, also the gearbox is frozen. And we know the gearbox will be specifically designed to take the strains of the Renault engine, which is a very different engine to a Mercedes engine. And this could lead to a lesser performance from the Mercedes engine, or even possibly a safety issue. And if there was a safety issue, the team is allowed to amend the gearbox. They'd be allowed to make it safe, but they aren't allowed to improve any performance on it. So they can only do the bare minimum to make the gearbox safe and have to try and keep the same performance in it. And this is the same for the chassis that they are developing. They are only allowed to adapt their current chassis to fit the Mercedes engine, but they can't adapt it in any way that will gain large amounts of performance. They're only allowed to, they have to try and keep the same performance they have now in the current chassis as they would when they mount the Mercedes engine. So obviously the Mercedes engine may require more mountings, which could make the chassis stiffer, which is good, but then McLaren may have to sort of reverse some of that to keep the same performance in the chassis. Now, where I could see this being an issue is if it causes McLaren to drop down in the field and come lower in the championship next year, where we've been seeing them recently. They laid off 1,200 staff across their racing and road car division at the start of lockdown, and even more recently than that, we've seen them say that they are contemplating mortgaging the MTC to raise up to £300 million to stay afloat. Now, I don't necessarily think that McLaren will drop massively down the grid. I think they'll maybe drop one or two places if there is a massive issue. Obviously, we know the Mercedes power unit is extremely strong, so it may even help prop them up and stay in the same place, but only time will tell with that. Now, where I could see it being an issue is we know the Racing Point car is already very strong, and the FIA are removing a section of the floors in 2021 so as to not require Pirelli to develop new tyres. So the cars are going to lose roughly half a second of their winter development, which is approximately what they gain over a winter just through this section of the floor being removed. So this means that the Pirelli doesn't need to develop new tyres. The tyres aren't getting larger and larger strains on them each year, and in a time where we're talking about the cost caps and how the economics of the world are changing, then I think this is a very good thing for the sport, where we're not requiring people to spend money just for the sake of spending money, and in fact we're actually thinking about the impact that it will have. Now, I think going into 2020, McLaren are poised to probably get fourth in the constructors. I see them having a stronger team than Racing Point. I think Stroll's a decent driver. I just don't think he's at the same calibre as Carlos or Sergio or Lando. So I see Sergio pulling in quite a lot of points for Racing Point, but I see McLaren outscoring them and potentially Renault as well. I know the car they have is a lot better than Renault's, but we saw the long run pace from the Renault, and it's probably the third fastest car on those long runs. And it may just be the single lap pace that could let it down. So that may be a factor to see next week in Austria. I think we could be pleasantly surprised with Renault, because obviously teams are all going to be making aerodynamic developments to their cars. So the cars we've seen in testing will be nowhere near what we see first race in Austria, and McLaren could have made a large jump, or Renault could have made a large jump as well, who I think are poised for sixth place in the constructors at the minute, but we'll see with that. Yeah, I think there could just be a bit of an issue with McLaren and how their money situation is, because we've seen them, they were one of the biggest pushers for the cost cap in 2021, and which they got pushed through down from 175 million to 145 million, which is brilliant. Makes the sport a lot more competitive. I think it will give a lot tighter fighting, a lot closer fighting, and ultimately for those 2022 cars, I think it's such a good thing that the cost cap has been introduced now, because it means that the big teams, while they will do a lot of their development this year for the 2022 cars, I think that it will allow the smaller teams to catch up in next season while they're doing their development as well. So we know both sets of teams will do their basics of development already, but they'll only really start focusing on them next year. I think once this season's out with, I don't think we'll see a whole ton of development on the new cars, on the current cars even if it is just aerodynamical. I can see pretty much all the designers focusing on 2022 from next season onwards, and then that could allow teams like Racing Point or McLaren to capitalise and maybe take a third in the championship, which would be great. But I know, I think the fact that McLaren's development is going to be very limited with just purely aerodynamical, whereas someone like Racing Point could come in, make a new gearbox, or completely rejig their rear suspension, because we've seen that Mercedes have that really like new innovative rear suspension design. But yeah, I think it will be hard to tell until the 2021 season starts how McLaren are going to fare, but I could see them probably dropping back behind Racing Point next year. And like I was saying, with their monetary issues, this could be an issue for them, even though they have pushed for the cost cap and are looking at now this remortgaging. They don't just have the racing division, they have the car division, and I think McLaren are a team that needs to be in Formula One. They're so iconic, and this new McLaren with Zach Brown and Andreas Seidel, it's completely different from the Ron Dennis McLaren, and I prefer it. The first team I supported was McLaren, because I watched the 2007 season, my first one, Lewis Hamilton, this young British lad come through, amazing. I loved that team, but I prefer this one because they're almost akin to a Red Bull. They're fun. They're not afraid to show personality and colour. They're not just grey or silver. They they have personality, and having Danny Rick coming into that team, no doubt gonna bring another lease of life. He would never have got an opportunity with a McLaren if Ron Dennis was there. So yeah, I hope that the 2021 season doesn't impact McLaren too much, and the cost cap will help balance that out. But I think it will be interesting to watch it play out and see if this limited development that they will have on their car, with it being purely aerodynamical, will affect them. And yeah, I want you guys to tell me what you think. Comment below or tweet me at Elliot_F1, and yeah, let me know what you think. If you have any ideas or want me to talk about anything, feel free, message me. Like I said, comment, tweet me. Hope you all have a lovely day. Stay safe, and yeah, hope you come back. Like, subscribe, do all of that biz. Anyway, thank you for watching, and bye bye.